The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
A mute demoniac was brought to Jesus. And when the demon had been cast out, the mute man spoke. And the crowds marveled, saying, "Never was anything like this seen in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "He casts out demons by the prince of demons." And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every infirmity. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Pray, therefore, the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
And normally, I think, when we hear the word wrestling, we think of a sport. It's not my particular favorite sport. But wrestling is also a very useful image of what we experience in life. And so from very early times, that is, early Jewish times, this story of Jacob wrestling with someone, a man, an angel, whatever, was seen as a metaphor of wrestling with God, of wrestling in our lives. And Jacob wrestled with this stranger, with this angel, and indeed with God in his own life, being a bit of a cheat when he was young, and that terrible fraternal rivalry with his slightly elder twin, Esau. So this was a moment of encounter of a spiritual and physical and emotional kind, which changed his life and changed his name. Henceforth he would be known as Israel. But this story in Genesis remains a kind of archetypal story of what we face as we struggle with ourselves, with life and what it throws at us, with other people who make up our lives, and indeed with God. All our life is an encounter with God. And in Jesus we see the help, the divine help we are given in our struggle with the powers of darkness, as Jesus cures the demon-obsessed man. And the man received the gift of speech, part of our definition of humanity, to be able to communicate in some way with others. But here we see Jesus intervening in that particular struggle of that mute and demon-possessed man. But the Pharisees missed the point of all of this. They couldn't blame God for the struggles and for the demon possession. They couldn't blame themselves, so they blamed the devil. And therefore Jesus must be acting under the control or power of the chief demon, Satan. So the Gospel today and the first reading invite us to consider how our life is going, how the struggle of our life is going, how inevitable struggle is in our lives, but also because of the way the Pharisees rejected the work of Jesus and the miracles of Jesus, that we must not reach rash conclusions, that we should rather have gratitude for the way in which God helps us in our struggles, that we should thank God for all that we receive and for His presence and concern for each one of us. And that is why we like some moments each day to set aside time for reflection on the mysteries of God, on the goodness of God, and on the power of the Most High to be with us in our struggles. Amen.